Shalom Bracha and welcome once again to Mitzvah of the Week. This week's Parasha is Parashat Korah. And Mitzvah of the Week, as always, is a division of Parasha Study Plus and Tanakh Study. This week in Parashat Korah, we actually have the command of Pidyon Haben, redeeming the firstborn son from very specific parents, which we will be talking about, even though we do mention it in Parashat Bo, the actual command based on Sefer HaChinuch and from the Rambam, etc., is from this week's Parasha, Parashat Korah. So let's get started with our first slide. We see in this week's Parasha, Bemidbar, Perek Yurchet, Pesukim Tet Vav and Tet Zayin, Kol Peter Rechem Lechol Basar. So every first birthing of the womb, Rechem is the womb, of every being, Asher Lechol Basar, Asher Yakribu LaHashem, Ba'adam U'Ba'Behema, for man or animal, Hielach, Ach Pado Tifde Et Bechor Ha'adam. Right? It will be for you, but you first have to redeem the Bechor Hadam. Ach Pado Tifde Et Bechor Ha'adam. When it's double like that, Pado Tifde, it's verily, surely, it shall be done, and it's a command, it's an imperative. That person must redeem the Bechor Hadam. Ve'et Bechor Behema Teme'ah Tifde. And an unclean animal, Teme'ah, also gets to be redeemed. This is not to be confused with the mitzvah of Peter Hamor, which is not the scope of today's mitzvah. But again, the behemah, which are pure animals, this is behemah. Peter Hamor can be redeemed because the Hamor is not an animal that can be clean, that can become clean. It's teme'ah. But again, not to be confused, that's not the mitzvah that we're focusing on. We're focusing on Tifde et Bechor Ha'adam. Now, how much do you redeem for? The next pasuk says, Upduyav, right? What's the redemption price? Mi ben Chodesh, you have to make sure that it's 30 days and up. Tifde be'er kecha, kesef hameshet shekalim b'shekel HaKodesh, Aisrim gerahu. So, from the age of 30 days and up, which we'll get to, the money, be'ayr kecha, kesef hameshet shekalim, the value of 5 shekalim. So, the shekalim that are kesef, a special weight that add up to Aisrim gera. So, we're going to see the more on the measurement, but bottom line is the Torah actually prescribes 2 things. Number one, that when does this person become redeemed? It has to be 30 days and up, and the price is 5 shekalim b'shekel HaKodesh for a weight of Esrim Gera. We mentioned when we talked about Hala in last week's parasha, also just the different biblical measurements, and Gera was included in it. Bottom line for us, it's going to be 5 silver coins. And for any of these redemptions that were mentioned in Pasuk Tet Vav, which include the redemption of the Adam. So now let's go to Sefer HaChinuch, Mitzvah Shin Saldi Bet, 392. And when we see Mitzvat Pidyon Bechor, we see the following. Lifdot Bechor Adam in Mitzvah 392. Kelomar, what does it mean? Shemitzvah al kol ish Misrael. It is a mitzvah from every man mi-Yisrael, from Yisrael. We're going to see that it applies to Yisraelim, not people who are designated as Kohanim or Leviim. If a person is Yisrael, then this mitzvah applies. She'yivdeh min ha-kohen, that you redeem from the kohen, beno, his son, shehu bechor le'imo, also ha-Yisraelit, that it's the eldest son that also comes from a mother that is a Yisraelit. So if a man is a Yisrael and he marries a Kohenet, this doesn't apply. He marries somebody who's a Leviyah, does not apply. It has to be 2 Yisraelim partners, the man and the woman, both from Yisrael, and they have to have an eldest son, their first son, the eldest child, and that child has to be a boy. As Sefer HaChinuch quotes our Pasuk, Ach Pado Tifde Et Bechor Ha'adam, U'matzar b'makom acher shetala akatuva bechora bepeter rechem. So here, in this case, it has to be from the first of the womb, from that mother. So let's say a man marries 2 different women, and he has an eldest son with each one of these women. It's a Peteh Rechem for the woman, and it's a Peteh Rechem for woman A, and for Peteh Rechem for woman B, the first baby to come out of their womb. So there would be a Pidyon Haben for both children. That's why and it's not based on his, but let's say woman A was married to him 10 years ago, and now, so he has children already. That would go more for inheritance. And now, this is when it comes to actually what is the Bechor here, it's Peteh Rechem. Shneimar b'Seder Bo el Paro, and the proof is, as we mentioned before, from Parashat Bo, Kol Bechor Peter Korechem b'Bnei Yisrael ba'adam o ba'behema lihu. So all of the Bechor that is Peter Korechem, that is the beginning, the first baby to come out of the birth canal of the womb. That is what we're talking about with the redemption. Uperush Peteh Rechem. What does it mean to have Peteh Rechem? Petihat Rechem. Peteh Rechem means the opening of the womb. Kelomar, as if to say, Shaya Rishon lepetah Rechem imo. It was the first one that opened up the womb of that mother. Now we learned something else from here also, that Sefer HaChinuch is continuing, that says, if, let's say, God forbid, this is from Masechet Bechorot, Mem Vav Aleph, as quoted by Sefer HaChinuch, if somebody, let's say, God forbid, had a miscarriage or gave birth to a stillborn baby, so that nefel, that's called a nefel. So look here on the line bottom. Kol nefel she'imo teme'ah leda mehamato haba harav eno bechor lekohen. If there was a baby that was born that made the person teme'ah, the woman become teme'ah, as if she actually birthed a child, that is considered the one that's Peteh Rechem, but now the baby passed away, so you're not going to redeem it. And the next baby that hopefully B'ezrat Hashem is healthy, that one does not get a Pidyon. So if there is a miscarriage first, then the mother and the father are no longer eligible for the next baby. Let's say they had a miscarriage, their first pregnancy, they had a failed pregnancy, miscarriage. Now their first child is a baby boy, and they're both Israelim. And since they had the miscarriage, they will not have a Pidyon Haben. Sha'nefel bitcho k'shekadam lo. Aval kol nefel she'eni mo teme'ah leda b'shvilo haba harav b'chol hakohen. But if it was just a very small baby, quote unquote, let's say it didn't really reach the full, we're going to use the word not gestation, but it's saying, let's say, full development, then that doesn't disqualify a couple from having a Pidyon, even if there was a miscarriage. Halakha l'ma'aseh, this goes by amount of days, and it has to be, the person would have had, in order to be eligible for a Pidyon Haben after a miscarriage, the miscarriage would have had to occur before 40 days of conception. So now with technology we're able to calculate it. Even if a woman was to calculate from missed periods, it wouldn't be as accurate. But again, you can try. You go to the doctor, and we can follow it to try to predict what was the time of conception. And then 40 days later, that's if the baby was expelled after that, then that's already considered a miscarriage to stop a person from having a Pidyon on their next healthy child, B'ezrat Hashem. I'm going to shrink myself down. This next slide is what I just said in English. So if you wanted to take a look, you can pause the video now. Okay, after that, Sefer HaChinuch then goes and talks about the shoresh of this mitzvah. What's the reason why we have this concept of redeeming the firstborn son? Sheratza Hashem itbarach lezakotenu la'asot mitzvah bereshit piryo. He says that Hashem wanted to give us the zechut to accomplish a mitzvah, a dedication to HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the first of our fruits. L'ma'andat ki hakol shelo, to know that everything is from God, even our children. Ve'en lo le'adam davar ba'olam rak ma she'yichalek lanu Hashem itbarach b'chasadav. We own everything that we have in this world is only with the grace of Hashem and with His chesed. V'yavin ze bir'oto כי אחר שיגיע האדם כמה יגיעות וטרח כמה טרחים בעולמו והגיע לזמן שעשה פרי וחביב עליו ראשית פריו כבבת עינו. So it says the glory of the person's eye, the apple of the person's eye, as there's an expression, it comes from the first of the person's fruit. So yes, all of the work, all the hard work that a person toils over their fruit, they get so much pleasure when the work is finally done and they see the fruits, and none better than the first fruits that they have. Miyad notno lakadosh baruch hu. So you give that fruit to Hashem, right? So again, so this is the first of the son. The son is the first son, the first child, the person who worked hard to live a good life, get married, find the nasib, go through the motions to make sure that the person has a baby. And now you say, this Hashem is dedicated to you. So in order to enjoy the child, you must redeem it. It really belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you must redeem it to bring it back into your reshut. Ve'od, a second reason. Right, לזכור הנס הגדול, לזכר הנס הגדול שעשה לנו השם יתברך בבחורי מצרים שהרגם והצילנו מידם. Also to remember the Makat Bechorot in Mitzrayim, where Hashem killed off all of the firstborns in Mitzrayim but spared ours. And it's a constant reminder for, again, the Nisim and Niflaot, the miracles that Hashem provided for us as well in the Bemidbar. And again, the huge miracle of Makat Bechorot. Here is that in English as well. So again, two reasons for this mitzvah. One, to just show that, for us to understand that everything is from God, and nothing is more than our prized possession than our first of our fruits, and the first child that we have is like that as well. So therefore it belongs to Hashem, and therefore we have to redeem it by way of mitzvah, to show us that, to teach us that, and also to remember that our eldest have a special kedusha, that they were saved from Mitzrayim Makat Bechorot, and we therefore they're consecrated to Hashem, and we have to redeem them in order for them to be with us. So what are some of the practical applications of this mitzvah, and how do we do this mitzvah? So Sefer HaChinuch continues and says that also in Masechet Bechorot, quoting, Shemitzvat Pidyon hu, Mishiyesh lo 30 yom u'ma'ala, right, from 30 days and on, in the baby's from the baby's birth. Why is that the day that we have to redeem the baby? Sheyatza miklal nefel. We're constantly worried, bar minan lo alenu, has v'shalom, that from 30 days from when the baby is born, we're not sure if the baby is going to live and make it. Those are very fragile days. So from 30 days after the baby is born, then we know and we understand that the baby will live. Also, there's a big machloket in the Gemara that if the baby was born 7 months after gestation in the mother's womb for 7 months or 9 months, then the baby is going to be fine. But if it was born at 8 months, we need to wait a month to see if it could actually live, because it's a big sakana to be born in that 8th month. There's a lack in the development of the lungs, and our rabbis even knew this before technological advances. And it's in the Gemara that if the baby is born, we always have this safek. Maybe they were born maybe it's the end of the 8th, beginning of the 9th, beginning of the 8th, end of the 7th. We're not so sure. So we always wait 30 days to make sure that they come out of any safek of a nefel, of God forbid, a stillborn baby or a baby that will pass away. Right, Shneimar in our pasuk, right, ben chodesh tifdeh, u'mitzvah zo from Kedushim mutelet ala'av. So furthermore, so practically speaking, we have to wait 30 days from the baby's birth. Why? Because we want to make sure that it's for sure alive. Then whose responsibility is it? It's on the father. Why? Because Aharon and his sons were the ones that were in charge of redeeming it, and therefore, so we take it from the Torah, the fact that it was Aharon and his son, so it's from the father and from father to son as well. Now, what is the Pidyon? As we mentioned in the Pesukim itself, Pidyon hu ben bekesef hashaveh 5 selaim, 5 selah, 5 nice silver coins, ben b'sheva kesef, ben b'metaltelin shebegufan mamon. So it could either be actual money or something that is a commodity that you can trade that has the value of 5 selah, which we said is esrim gerah. And the reason why you have to say, the Sefer HaChinuch has to say this is it excludes property and also slaves. Like you can't trade people for it as well. That was, if I owned a slave, that was not going to be allowed either. So again, Sefer HaChinuch giving us these finer points. Sefer HaChinuch mitzvah shin tzadibek continues. 5 selaim shel pidyon haben yachol litenem lakohen echad or lakohanim arbetz. Now we're making the ceremony and we hire a kohen, we find him, and we say, look, we'd be honored if you would be the kohen that I redeem to. Let's say that there would be fighting. Technically, let's say, oh yeah, I have two great grandfathers, Baruch Hashem, that were kohanim, and we want to honor them both so that you can redeem it with two kohanim. Right here, Sefer HaChinuch says, Kohen echad ol kohanim abeh, ve'hayuv l'tunu l'kohen zachar v'lo l'kohenet Aharon u'banav ketiv bekesef Pidyon bechor. As we said, it's a kohen and not a kohenet because of Aharon and his sons who were male. V'im ratzah kohen lahazir lo ha'pidyon achar shnitenu lo yatsa yedei chova. If the kohen wants to give back the money, right? Let's say the father comes to the kohen, here's the 5 coins, and now give me my son. Now the 5 coins are in the possession of the kohen. Is the kohen allowed to give back the money? So what do you do? We're doing a fake transaction? No, as long as it's given in with a honest conscience, with a pure heart, that we give it with knowing we're not going to give the money back. If the kohen then wants to give the money back to the father, he can. Exactly like I just said, you can't give it over with the condition, I'll be the kohen, and I want to give you be my kohen, I want to give you this money, but you got to give it back to me on a condition. He has no obligation to give back the coins. The coins are the kohen's, no strings attached, and if there were strings attached, then it wouldn't be a valid sale, quote unquote. Sefer HaChinuch continues, וכן למדונו רבותינו שבזמננו, שבסדר כזה עושה פדיון הבן. So, this is how you do the Pidyon haben. What should we be doing? מביאים כוס יין. We bring a cup of wine. והדס, we also bring a branch, the hadasim, the myrtle branch for besamim, right? Hadas the bet abi haben, we bring it to the father of the house of the father of the son. All the makom acher could be in a shul, which is what we do now. Ve'akohen shivhar bo ha'av latet lo pidyon beno mevarech techila ala yain ve'ala hadas. And the kohen that was chosen says first borei pri hagefen, and then says borei atzeh besamim on the hadas. Now I didn't put it in Hebrew because I don't want to confuse anybody, but there's a lengthy beracha here that Sefer HaChinuch quotes right from the Rishonim that was said by the kohen. It's a beautiful blessing. It has all these pesukim in it. It's just not our custom to say this for the kohen to say this beracha. We do the yain and we do the hadas. Here you could look it up in Sefer HaChinuch Mitzvah Shin Sadi Bet. It's a very interesting beracha. And here it is in English, just if you wanted to look at it, you could take a snapshot. I shrunk myself down. But again, I don't want to put it down because that's not part of, you look at all the Sidurim, that's not part of our community's practice. We don't say that beracha. We just do the yain and we do the besamim. And now, in the next slide, you'll see the next beracha. And it's taken right out of the Rambam. The Rambam tells us, this is Rambam, Mishneh Torah Hilchot Bikurim, Perek Yud Aleph Halacha He. Rambam says, Hapodeh et beno, the person who was redeeming his son. What's the beracha? Mevarech asher kadeshan u'sotav v'tzivano al pidyon haben. Very simple, al pidyon haben. Ve'chozer u'mevarech shehayanu. And then after that we say shehayanu. So these are the 2 berachot. This is reflected in Al Sidurim, that this is said by the Abi Haben. So the Kohen traditionally is saying Gefen and Hadas, and then the Rambam brings down who says these 2 berachot. This is from the Abi Haben. Now it is customary. Sometimes the rabbi who's running the ceremony will say Hagefen and say the Hadas. Lo Mashaneh, that's not me'akev. The Rambam just talks about this beracha to make sure that the person who's redeeming his son is saying the appropriate blessings. It's al pidyon asher kedishanu tzivano al pidyon haben, and then shehayanu. Ve'achar kach noten pidyon lakohen. Right away he puts the coins in the kohen's hand. Ve'im pada atzmo mevarech livdot habechor umevarech shehayanu. If God forbid a person was never redeemed by his father, and now he himself, just like a brit milah. If God forbid a person whose father did not give them a brit milah, it then becomes, once they become 13, their responsibility to get the brit milah. Same thing here. If he was never redeemed, it becomes on him, and then the beracha, the nusach would change. It's right here in the Rambam. The Ramban, Sefer HaChinuch brings the Ramban that tells us that, and we have all of these beautiful prose that are in our Sidur as a byproduct of the of when we buy the baby back. Od katav Ramban zichrono lebracha sheb'sha'a shenoten ha'av ha'kesef pidyono lakohen, when it's time for the ceremony and the father is coming to pay the coins to the kohen, shenoten b'no b'yad kohen ve'omer lo kohen. So you have to do a little role play to understand what's going on. We do this to understand what's going on and to really check the person. Eze chaviv alecha yoter, which is more beloved to you, right? The kohen is now asking the father, bincha o chamesh selaim halalu, you want your son or do you want these 5 coins? Again, the exact measurement that the Torah prescribed for us. Ve'ha'av meshiv, and the father then says, no, beni haviv alai, I want my son. Miyad, right away, notela kohen adinarim. He takes the coins and that's it, right? And that's when we would say the beracha. Umulichan beyado al rosh haben, then he puts them on the head of the child and says, zeh tachat zeh, I'm taking these coins in lieu of the child. And you could keep reading, this is beautiful nusach, but all of these, this quote unquote, this role play that we're having at the ceremony is brought down by the Ramban and must be done. Again, it's not me'akev as long as you're doing the beracha and the transaction, but this is the right way to do the Pidyon haben, and to go through this dialogue so the father understands, the kohen understands, everybody understands that we're bringing him up for chuppah and ma'asim tovim, and then there are beautiful blessings. Some people do Birkat Kohanim, some people from, as is quoted here, from Mishleh, from Tehillim, beautiful Pesukim that are said, so that we know that we have the entire life of the boy ahead of us in Simcha. Here is that excerpt just in English. Shrink myself down. You can pause if you would like to see. Okay, and finally, our last slide just gives a couple of dinim, which are very important to Pidyon haben. Practically speaking, you can find this in the Ramah. The din that I knew where it was that I wanted to share was in Ramah Or Chaim Siman Taqna, which talks about fasting, because there's some practical things that we need to know about Pidyon haben. So I'll just read from here this excerpt. Yesh mitzvah lekayem seuda be'ayit Pidyon haben. First of all, so what do we now we understand who it applies for. It applies to mitzvah Pidyon haben is only for a Yisrael, a couple that are both the man and the woman are from Yisrael, not a Kohen, not a Levi. It doesn't apply to them. It must be a peterechem, the first opening of the womb. 2 things that we learned from that we said that if there, God forbid, lo alenu, there was a miscarriage of over 40 days, that's it. That's considered the peterechem, and any baby that comes after that, even if it's a boy, does not get a pidyon. Also with peterechem, I failed to mention it before, I should mention it now, a C-section baby does not receive a pidyon haben, and neither does the next baby after that. So C-section baby does not get a Pidyon haben. Then we mentioned about how much money. It's 5 sedaim. It's only after 30 days to make sure the baby is not a nefel. We went over the nusach, which is the syntax, the way that the beracha is written. We went over most of the procedures. Now about the party, which has become very popular nowadays. It used to be, even 30 years ago, that Pidyon haben, most people did it, but they did it in the house. The rabbi came over and that was it. It was not as much fanfare as we have today. We'll see that it is important, though. Here, this is brought down that yesh mitzvah lekayem seuda be'et Pidyon haben. It's a mitzvah to have a meal with bread in Pidyon haben, washing your hands, having bread, and eating. And the Terumat Adeshin says Shatam l'kiyum ha'seuda k'dei lefarsem berabim et ma'aseh ha'pidyon. The reason why we have this party berabim is to say that there's a mitzvah and to teach people you have to do the ma'aseh of the pidyon, of the redemption. It's also a chesed to be mefarsem and to publicize that yatzanu mimitzrayim, exactly like we mentioned with all of the with the fixings that we said, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeemed all of our firstborns and killed the ones of Mitzrayim. That's also a pirsum of the Nes. V'yesh b'mitzvah zo, all these great things, shekol bechor b'ofen tiv'i kadosh, and to understand that every bechor, every eldest born is kadosh, is actually holy. Now, just on this, I wanted to focus on this seudah is called a seudah mitzvah. Now, what happens? This is where I remember this halakha. Let's say a person has a Pidyon haben during the 9 days. 9 days, there's no meat, there's no partying, there's no festivities. You still have this meal, and you're allowed to have meat, and you're allowed to have wine, and you're allowed to do all of those things, meat and wine, even though there's avelut of of the Beit HaMikdash, you could still have this party when it falls out at that time. We try to do the party as fast as possible. We always try to do the party right on day 30, usually the night of day 30. If a person can't do it, you could do it the next morning, but we really try to do Zerizim Makdimim LeMitzvah, LeMitzvot, and we try to do it as quickly as possible. Also, there's a very famous, so again, just to know that when the Pidyon falls out, that's when you got to do the party. It's not something we could schedule, delay 2 weeks, delay this time, wait for this guy, I don't like this date. We do it on the day that it falls out. Same thing with the Brit Milah. And a very powerful Seder Hamed, which says that Yesh Omrim Shekol Ha'ochel Mimena, anybody who eats and partakes from Seudah of Pidyon Haben, Nechshav Ke'ilu Tzam Peh Daled Ta'aniyot. It's as if they fasted 84 fasts, which again has a significant number based on the Sod, which is not for now. But again, it just shows that a person, if you're invited to a Pidyon, you should definitely attend and definitely make sure to eat something as well, because it is a great mitzvah. That's it for us this week. Again, we should understand the great chesed that Hashem does for us for the first of our fruit, including our children, and be committed to the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben. Shabbat Shalom.